All right. Thanks for being here today. Carolyn Wilman, marketer, writer, publisher. What do you find works best to engage with an audience?
Oh, being yourself. You have to be yourself because it's becoming more and more obvious as social media is getting larger and larger that the people that are doing the best are the most transparent and the most authentic. That seems to be a big word being kicked around, especially in the marketing world, authenticity and transparency. And I've done that for years. I've always just been myself. And I think that's come across in my work, but it's easier to see now because when I started writing books, there was no Facebook even. There was the internet, of course. I had a newsletter and a website and things like that, but it's become easier to show who you are to the world and what gifts you have and how you can share them with others.
Being in marketing, when you're looking at social media or just in the real world, what we call the real world, and you're out there doing things, do you realize when you're being marketed to? Like, do you consciously say sometimes this is marketing, or is it just, do you see the structure, or are you just a part of it?
I think it depends on what it is. Sometimes if it's a new promotion, especially if it's good, I'll really admire it. I'm like, oh, that's good. I wish I had thought of that. Sometimes it's just part of the fabric that it's just there so much. Like billboards or an ad on the radio, you're not even really listening anymore because you're just driving along. And it's filtered out a little bit. But when something clever comes along, I always go, oh, I love that. I wish I'd thought of that. That's very good. Or, when marketers just are brilliant, I just admire them.
Yeah, I notice on social media that I get marketed to sometimes because you'll have those targeted ads. And then you're like, oh, I need to look that up. So then you look that thing up on either its website or Amazon or wherever. And maybe it takes 2 or 3 purchases before it sinks in that you're being marketed to aggressively on whatever platform you're looking at. And with TV back in the day, maybe you didn't notice it that much because you didn't think about marketing, but also the amount of food commercials growing up. Like I haven't had a regular network TV. I haven't watched that for maybe 10 or 15 years. Like just had cable for the internet, but not for anything else. And I did notice after that I ate less because I have less of that. This is a Pizza Hut commercial. This is a cereal commercial, all these other things. And then when you stop doing that, it makes it easier to not think about it all the time. But I do find myself walking around in regular life thinking about marketing sometimes, like with nature, and you see flowers and you go, that's a marketing. It's a marketing ploy. That flower is trying to get me to look at it or attract insects to pollinate it, or this fruit is marketing to me, so I would eat this fruit. So it's interesting that you could look at everything through a marketing standpoint because it's just attention.
I've never thought of it that way. I know that there's some creators that I follow that talk about, and was it Carl Jung that gave everything archetypes, or was it somebody else? But I know that he said things like nature and beauty. Like we see a sunset and, everyone goes, oh, wow, that's so beautiful. Well, that's an archetype and that we all recognize it and we just see it as such. So it's just part of the fabric of the planet. But I never thought of the flowers and the fruit. Makes sense, yeah, because the flowers need to get pollinated and the fruit needs to be eaten to pass the seeds on. So in a way, yeah, you're right, that is marketing, but it's also nature. And it's not doing it aggressively. It's just hanging out, being itself.
Yeah, it's interesting. So with your work in marketing? When did like your official work in it begin?
Well, actually, I've always been in marketing. When I went to school, my major was marketing, and I've done every job in the marketing department that you can imagine. Everything from, inside customer service to event marketing to starting up web and social media for some companies, newsletters. Like I've run the gamut in marketing. But my career had always been in corporate. I didn't go the ad agency route, and what industry was booming, it was always IT. So all my corporate experience was IT based. I worked in hardware, software, internet companies, all these different companies, and got caught in the big dot-com bubble burst in 2001. And so I found myself unemployed for a long period of time because it was very difficult to jump industries. And then I finally did. But then I had also gotten pregnant. So then I just became a stay-at-home mom, and my husband had a business at the time. So I just did all the back-end marketing for him and while I was at home. And then when it was time to go back to work, I was looking at all my options, and an opportunity to write a book came up. And so I took that route instead. So I haven't worked for somebody else for, well, I guess almost 25 years now.
What do you think the big difference between like ad marketing and the type of marketing that you started out with?
I think it's better now because everybody has a voice, and a company that had no leverage back in the day can do miraculous things now because of social media. So one example I saw was there's a fella on TikTok doing cucumber salads, and his videos go viral. So he himself isn't selling anything, but one of the ingredients was an everything but the bagel seasoning. And a little company in Australia couldn't keep their stuff on the shelves, and they had to beg their supplier to do a weekend shift just to fill the shelves again because their sales did this. And when in the past would that have ever happened? Never. The opportunities for small businesses to connect with people, to reach out to people, to help people was never an option, because unless you had the budget to afford TV or pay for a newspaper ad or pay for a telephone book ad or whatever, you weren't connecting. And now anybody with a phone can pick it up and do a little video, and their business could just skyrocket.
So how much time then, or maybe the first question would be, how much, or how do you decide which social media platforms to use and how much time to put into developing your social media for your marketing?
Well, I think it depends on your company. It depends on which one you want to do. Now, I have 3 businesses, and one, I say she's asleep. She's just hanging out in the corner. She's doing business, but she's not on the socials really, because she's just hanging out because her sisters are busy. So I'm the contest queen, where I teach people how to win sweepstakes. So of course that's always fun. And I'm always on the socials with that because people have questions on how to win, and there's always giveaways, and different platforms allow me to reach different people because let's face it, who doesn't want to win? And then Idea Majesty is my sweepstakes marketing company. So I work with businesses promoting those giveaways. But when I promote them, it's always through Contest Queen because that's the audience. And then I knew I needed an author website, but I put it off as long as I could. And then last year I had to build it. And so I also have Words for Winning, where all my books live, because I started with my own, and then I started buying the publishing rights from other authors whose books were out of print. And I started with Helene Hadsel, and I've done her books, and I'm translating them, and I'm doing Audible. And then I bought some from who coincidentally was her second publisher, his books and his wife's books, and all of them have passed. But the last book I did was out of print for 42 years. And now, and it was only available, it wasn't really in bookstores. Most of the time, if you had met Tag Powell at a seminar or something, a lot of these coaches would have tables at the back with all their books and tapes and things. I am dating myself here. You could buy it, but it wasn't, at the Barnes and Noble or whatever the equivalent was at the time. And now it's, Amazon, Kobo, Kindle, and eventually it'll be Audible too. Like it's able to reach people that had never had access to this information. So this is one of the reasons I love the new technologies, because things that have been lost can now be reproduced for a whole new audience.
Do you think that's the marketing mind in you of seeing that, of going, I can write my own books, and I can also take these other books that I like and that are out of print and market those?
Yeah, but I'm also a teacher, because everything that I reproduce or even create myself is always to lift each other people up. So one of my favorite expressions is all boats rise with the tide. So I think if I am producing something that makes your life better from an experience I've had, or I make the mistakes and I tell you what not, here's the mistake I made, here's what not to do, so you don't make the same mistake, you can just carry on and avoid that problem, right? So your life is now better. And that's how I've been going along. And that's how I started. My first book I started writing it in 2004. It was published in 2006. I love motivational books and inspirational books and educational books. And my dad, when I was 18, gave me a book and said, if I can teach you at 18, when I figured it out at 36, you'll be way ahead. And so I read Mark Victor Hansen's book, The 1 Minute Millionaire. And one of the solution ideas to make $1 million is to write a book in 30 days and make $1 million. Well, that book took me 20 months, and I have not cracked $1 million on the book sales yet. But what it did teach me was persistence, and everything that I was able to teach others. I've had so many people come to me after they have read one of my books or taken one of my classes and said, hey, I turned around, I started doing this hobby of entering sweepstakes, and I won this thing that changed my life. I know people that have won a house from my advice. Life-changing. That makes me feel so good, because then I know I'm doing what I'm here to do, which is teach people how to have more fun in their everyday life. And not only could you win, a cooler or movie passes or theater tickets or, something small like a gift card, you can win something that's life-changing, like a car or a house or a dream trip or meet and greet with a favorite movie star, something like that. And I just love that I've been able to help people fulfill those dreams.
With your writing process, do you have a preferred place that you do most of your writing?
Here, we have a small house. So the office it is, except I dig down the background. We have a sports themed office, which, as it turns out, isn't conducive to podcasting.
Oh yeah, why not?
And videos, because it's a little chaotic. So I bought the divider, and I had my graphics guy turn all my book covers into banners, and I have 8 of them, and then I just rotate them depending on my mood or what I'm talking about. Or
so then when you were writing, or when you're writing, how did you set the time aside for it?
I just do. I guess I almost don't think about it anymore because, like I said, I've been working for myself for 25 years. So my life is very ebby and flowy, unlike other people. So, you know, today we have to go and run errands, but I'm going to be doing, a video tonight. But in between, as soon as we get back, I'll be sitting down at my desk. So I'm always kind of working, which isn't always great. Because I find even when I go on vacation, because I own my own business, the emails don't stop, the social doesn't stop, I'm always continuing to do something for some part of my business. But I find the best piece of advice I ever got when I was writing my first book, because all mine are nonfiction, except for one, but it was not written by me. It was one of the ones that I updated and republished. And for nonfiction, the best advice I got was write out the table of contents and keep writing. And then what I did was I wrote the easiest chapters first. So I didn't write in order. I've had people tell me they struggle because they don't know what to write first. They don't know. And I said, there's no rule that says you have to write the book linearly. Oh my gosh, that doesn't want to come out. There's no rules. So write the easiest chapters first. And then when I did that, by the time I got to the hardest chapter for me, I was 3/4 of the way through the book. Well, I'm not going to stop now. Yeah. I've got 3/4 of it done. I'm going to keep going. And the other thing nobody told me was the editing process was as long as the writing process. I wish I'd known that first time around.
Yeah, it seems like the way I think I'm done with a book is when I get sick of reading it. And I go, I can't read this anymore. You've read it through 20 times and done all these sorts of edits and everything. And then you have to make the decision of, is it ready to be released into the world, or does it need something else and it needs to sit over here and cool off for a little while and then come back to it later because it's missing that something that you wanted to, the point you wanted to get across. Or for me, it's a lot of, I feel like I'm not good enough to tell that story yet. So I need to live more life or write something else in order to be able to get that story out or to do justice for it, or enough justice to where I feel like it can be released into the world.
Do you have an editor? Because I find what I do is I'll go through it. And as I'm doing chapters, I send them to my editor and she goes through them and she'll edit, but she'll also give me ideas for things like, are you going to be talking about this at some point? Or are you foreshadowing something here? Or what are you doing for this part? She'll do that kind of a thing.
I don't do chapter by chapter, but if I split the story or the book into certain parts, then maybe I'll send a section off to an editor or to maybe what the industry would call an ideal reader or somebody just to look at it and to let me know if the story is tracking or if it's interesting. And you can tell if it's interesting by how long it takes them to return it to you, because you can send it. And then if you don't hear from them for a couple months, they may have started it and then they just didn't want to finish it. So that says a lot. But
yeah, it's good to have an outside set of eyes, because let's face it, none of us can see the forest for the trees sometimes because we're so immersed. That's what I learned with the first book I did, was things that I knew intuitively or was so familiar with, it made sense to me. When I tried to explain it to somebody else step by step, there was parts that I left out because that just made sense. But then when somebody else read it, they said, hey, what is this? And then I realized that I needed to, fill it in more with the things that I just know, because I don't know that I just know them. Does that make sense?
Yep. It's like math.
Then, so that's where I learned the editing. So I had to rewrite those chapters and really go point by point, like to things that even I think, well, that's stupid. Somebody should know that. No, don't assume that. Put it in there. because there will be that one person that doesn't know. And if somebody does know, they're just going to read past it. They're not even going to notice it.
Yeah, it's those little details too that can paint that picture in a person's mind without leaving so many blank spots. Like I would imagine that in a lot of books, and maybe fiction and nonfiction have some similarities, maybe have some differences, but if you don't get the whole story out enough for the person to understand, then I think you're going to lose that engagement with them, lose that interest in it. And as the writer, you're always, the story in your mind is so much bigger than ever is going to be on the pages. So when you're writing, do you take an idea and write about it, or do you have a line and then start writing about it? And maybe that seems like the same thing. And I would hear argument for it both being the same thing, but an idea being like justice or getting a deal or whatever the topic is, the idea, versus a line that popped into your head sometime that you think, this is something I want to research, or this is something a character in a story said, and I'm going to build the scene off of that.
Yeah, since I don't write nonfiction, and it's a whole nother kettle of fish. The one nonfiction book I did do was from Helene Hadsel. Now, she wrote nonfiction, and in her 70s, her late 70s, she decided she wanted to learn how to write fiction and took classes. She never stopped learning, which is amazing to me. You know, she was at an advanced age and she's like, oh, I want to learn something new. And off she went. And she did pretty good, but it's very funny because I redid her book, but the first chapters, it's really in depth, really in depth, really in depth. They're really good. And at the end, everything's kind of just tied up very quickly with a bow. And it's, as you said, I could tell that she got bored with it, but she didn't want to leave it. So she just did like the Dairy Queen, like a little curly Q at the top, like it's robust, robust, robust. Oh, she.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that might be the book that you just set aside and come back to it later. The problem is you might never come back to it. But
right, but at least she
those
finished
ideas
it,
bubble up.
and she's gone now. So I just put it out to the world the way it was. But I could see the arc.
In your nonfiction, do you use storytelling to explain a situation? Like Mary went to the grocery store to get a book of coupons so she could enter the sweepstakes.
I do. So I combine. So first, each chapter is like you were asking about. I think I do more topics. So one chapter's on why do companies run sweepstakes? You know, it's a marketing tool. And I go into all that's where I put my marketing crown on and talk about all that. But in each section of the book, like I'm talking about radio giveaways. And then I asked fellow sweepers to send in their stories because I want people to understand this isn't just me that likes to enter and win. Lots of people love it. And lots of people have all kinds of fun experiences around it. And in every book, I'm on my fourth one for sweepstakes. I have different stories in each one. So that if you read a similar book, because I update it, I change all the stories. So people aren't reading the same thing again. It's really amazing some of the stories and adventures people have had with this crazy hobby. Like things they didn't expect to happen, or people they didn't expect to meet, or places they never expected to go. And sometimes prizes happen quickly. I know some sweepers, one fellow sweeper, she kept bugging her sister to enter this giveaway, This is when mail-ins were very popular, and her sister said, fine. And she mailed one in. Her first sweepstakes, she won a car. That is so rare. So rare. But then I've got sweeper friends who've been doing it for 40 years, and they finally won a car. So, I mean, it runs the gamut. But I love sharing other stories. So I'll talk about an example of, hey, this is what you want to do with radio giveaways. And then I'll have a story insert with, Mary Brown from It's part of the US. I usually don't put their last names. It's like Mary from Sioux City, Iowa. And then I put her story. And I think it's good because it gives an example, a real life example, not just me making something up, but a real life example of something somebody did and what it was the outcome in a real life situation, so that when people are entering giveaways, they know what to expect. And the other books, because they're not written by me, I'll add notes in to bring them to today's future. Like, for example, in Money and You, Tag Powell has a whole chapter on dress for success. Well, back in the day, it was really important to wear a suit and tie and go to the bank and talk to people. And now we can sit in our pajamas and sit with your laptop on the couch and write a book. Like, it's not the same. But I did say, so I put a note in there saying it's not as important as it used to be. However, you still only have, one chance to make a first impression. So, take heed with your appearance and be as clean and tidy and forthwith as you can, so that people get a good first impression of who you are. Right? If I showed up here with my hair in curlers and, maybe a bathrobe on, people would think differently of me.
They think
right?
That's a lady that likes
Even though
comfort.
we're on Zoom, or this is, on StreamYard or whatever platform it is.
Let's get the marketing right. StreamYard.
Yeah, let's get the marketing right. But it's still the same idea, right? I'm in a little box. And I've learned a lot of changes. Like when I've been a Toastmaster for 18 years now. And boy, what a shift, because when you learn to do public speaking in front of people, and now you have to sit behind a camera and your hand gestures have to be higher, and there's no body language like there was, but you have to work more on your facial expressions and your tone of voice. It's a whole nother skill set to do these kind of things. And so I put notes like that in, the book, where it's like, yeah, this worked really well then. You might need to tweak it a little for today. And then I let the book kind of roll on. And then I also gave links to modern resources, so that people could download things. Like, so there's a free PDF for this, the book on my left, so that people don't necessarily like to write in books, or they bought the ebook or eventually the Audible book, then they can just download it and have it handy. So those are things you couldn't have done even maybe 15 years ago. Well, maybe 15, I don't know, 20. I've lost track of the internet. It's just, when I started working, we were on DOS computers.
Little CD /. Yeah. So then collaborative writing. I never thought about collaborative writing with dead people. Seems like there'd be less arguments, but I think you would also read enough of them to where you understand, you got a little insight to them. So it is kind of like they're a person sitting on your shoulder, and you're like, oh, I'm going to put this story in about this topic to kind of bring it into today's language and ideas. And they're like, well, no, I haven't heard of such a thing. But that's interesting. I like that. Have you done other collaborative writing with people that are there that are still alive? That's a weird
Not
question.
yet. So Helene Hadsel, who did the Name It and Claim It game, that's her most famous book. And she has 3 others. Now, I met her in 2008 because I had a podcast before it was cool. And I interviewed her, and I was a terrible interviewer, by the way. But I still put the audio out there because it's better than nothing, because there's not a lot of work, audio of her left. And I've been putting up whatever I can find. And in 2008, off air, I asked her if I could come visit her, and she said no. And 3 days later, she phoned me back. She was extremely intuitive, and I want to say psychic. She said, your spirit guides are so loud, you better come. So when I went to visit her, she said, you need to teach. She called it, the subtitle of the book is Winovers for Wishcraft. And she said, you need to teach it because no one else is going to, because I think she realized at that time her grandchildren weren't going to maintain her legacy, book legacy anyway. And I had already written a sweepstakes books. I was entrepreneurial. I was techie, things she wasn't. But my life just did a dip down. And then I did nothing with it for like 11 years. And finally, I got a hold of her son. 2 of her children predeceased her, unfortunately. And I got a hold of her son and said, hey, your mom asked me to do this back in 2008. I think it's time I did something. And he said, good idea. So I bought the rights because he still held the company that published all the books. And then through that, I ended up meeting Tag Powell, who was her second publisher. And I sent him all the books that I had updated. And he was so amazed with what I had done. And then I realized he had a whole body of work. And I said, well, who's maintaining your legacy? He said, nobody. I said, well, I'm going to offer to do it. And he's like, sure. And he's gone. So she passed away 2 years after I met her, and he just passed away last year. So I had met him, and within 6 months he was gone. And I could tell because he was ill at the time. And I thought, oh, if I'm going to buy the rights to his books, I better do it quickly because he's not going to be here long. And so he was happy that I was going to take care. Unfortunately, I couldn't publish his book in time for him to actually see it, but I did have the website up in time for him to see it. So he was pleased about that. I got a picture from his sister-in-law with a thumbs up on my cell phone one day that after he saw the website. So, nice. But he's gone. So I think it's interesting, but I did make his book more robust because I had access to tools that he didn't. So for example, I went through all the books that he had recommended and I pulled quotes from them and added them to the book because they were pertinent to different sections. Just like you said, adding stories to expand on a point. And then I added a recommended reading section, which he didn't have. And I put links to things, which of course he wouldn't have had at the time. 42 years ago, people weren't putting in URLs into books. So it's interesting to see how things have just changed over time. But as Helene said, she's very funny. In her third book, she wrote a chapter in it. And she said she figured out that just because they're dead doesn't mean they're smart. So when you said the collaborative writing with dead people might be easier, I thought maybe not.
Well, you might, ostensibly you'd have less arguments, but I would imagine the more you think about it, the more you create that persona just in your mind, the more you could have that conversation with them. It's an interesting thing to think about. So
well, I talk to her all the time because so I'm big on the woo-woo, and I do believe she's hanging around because I did a video, and I know she was behind this one. I did a video on her epitaph because she passed away on October 30th. So I did a blog post. She had written her own epitaph in 2007, and so I published it. And then I did a little video about her saying, 14 years ago, this amazing woman, left this earth. And that thing viraled. And I thought, Helene wants everybody to know who she is.
Still marketing.
She's out there. She's playing with things.
Where do you think then that, like, there's a thing you say where you put the crown on for this and the crown on for that. And I take it you're using that as like other people would say you're put on your marketing hat.
Yeah. But
so where did that idea come from?
Well, it started with marketing wise. There was a book written by Steve Ledoux called How to Win Lotteries, Contests, and Sweepstakes in the 21st Century. And he was dubbed, and I don't know who dubbed him this, but they dubbed him the Sweepstakes King. And that book was out in sometime in the 90s. And Oh, and he's very nice. I finally had a chance to meet him about 7 years ago. Anyway, he had this book and he was the sweepstakes king. So as I was writing my book, I understood that I wanted a website and I had to kind of brand myself. And I thought, well, if he's the sweepstakes king, I'm the contest queen. So I went and I found the URL. It was actually somebody owned it. And, you know, one of these companies that buys up URLs. And I bought it. And it was more money than I wanted to pay, but it was really reasonably priced now that I look back. And so I bought Contest Queen and I started doing that. So I say, well, when I'm thinking about it, I put on my crown. So then but as the Contest Queen, I got a lot of inquiries from companies about having me promote their giveaway. And I realized, oh, I need to split my marketing from my teaching. But of course, I still wanted to wear a crown because I had queen archetype going on here. So I came up with Idea Majesty, and my graphics guy is so clever. He did a little light bulb, but the filament is a crown. And we did the logo in purple because that's the color of royalty. And we came out with Idea Majesty because that's marketing. You're always, creating ideas. And so I wear that crown. And then when I had started doing Helene's works, the Name It and Claim It game, which is her teaching, metaphysical lessons and positive thinking through sweepstakes stories, that easily fit on Contest Queen. But her other books, she wrote In Contact with Other Realms and Confessions of an 83-Year-Old Sage, and her fiction book, A Man Called Friday, they didn't belong there. So I threw them on Idea Majesty because I didn't have any place else to put them. And I had a colleague say to me, they don't belong there. I go, I know, but I really don't want to start a third business. And then when I bought all of Tag Powell's books and his wife Judith's books, I thought, okay, I can't put off the publishing anymore. And so I tried to find something or think of something that had a regal, but I couldn't. But what I do like to teach people is how to win in life. And sweepstakes, that's my tagline, right? How to win in life. Oh, and sweepstakes. So I created Words for Winning because that's what I do. I write books. It's all words. So I came up with that. And that was a good title. And now all the books have a home. And the authors have a home, and it seems much better. So yeah, so I say I change crowns because that's a little more fun than a hat.
So then, going back to the origin of that question about ideas, and where do you think that ideas come from? If Helene is still out there in the ether somewhere and the ideas are somewhere before we have them, do you think that creativity is something we manifest ourselves or something that we act as like a conduit for? Or is there a mixture of both?
I think it's a little bit of both. Some I think is inherent to who we are. Like, we come in with a certain journey. A lot of people say, well, if you think positively enough, you can become anything you want. Well, it's true to a point, but at my age, I'm not going to become an Olympic athlete. I can't become an NBA basketball star. I'm not going to grow 2 feet.
I don't know. The NBA is starting to go downhill, so you might have a chance. You get in there on the rise up. Just start practicing.
You know what I mean? It's some things are not destined for me. However, I could become a best-selling author. Now, one of the interesting things that has been happening around me is that Helene Hansel, one of the most famous points about her life was she became Jose Silva's assistant. Now, Jose Silva was famous for creating something called the Silva mind control method. Now, they dropped the word mind control because it kind of freaked people out, but you're controlling your own mind. a lot of people know the monkey mind. They're familiar with that little chatter that's always going on. So one of the things the Silva method teaches you to do is how to calm that down. And it's a lot of it is through meditation. So if you ever take the Silva method, it's a 4-day course, and it's about 10 hours a day. 25 to 30% of it, you're meditating. And it's fascinating what comes in and what you learn to tap into. Now, Tag Powell met Helene through Jose because he was a Silva instructor. So I actually have started my path on becoming a Silva instructor. And I've taken the various Silva courses, and I've also been assisting at some of the Silva trainings. It's weird. I feel like sometimes I'm turning into Helene. Like I'll be at a Silva intensive being in one of the assistant team. And I think this is what Helene was doing during these programs. So I've taken it probably about 10 times. But non-assisting, I've taken it 3, plus I've taken Silva manifesting, and I'm taking next month the Silva method of mind mastery, which is like the next level. So I think we can have creativity just come up through us as part of who we are. But like you said off air before we started, if you're tired, if you're running out of steam, take a nap. It's like reboot. Because before I started, I had to reboot my computer because it wasn't working, and it's the old famous turn it off, turn it on again tech solution problem. And we need to do that sometimes, but I find I need to do that less because I've been doing the meditation through the Silva method. And it's amazing. And also I get ideas. And so the idea with the Silva method is you quiet your mind and you go into alpha state, which is where you get all your ideas. And then you come back into beta and then you execute those ideas. So it's like thought and action are symbiotic. And thoughts float. That's one of the things they teach. And you can send people, thought messages. And there's a famous story of Prince who woke his sound producer up at 3 a.m. when he had an idea. And he said, we need to record this right now. And he says, what are you, crazy? It's like 3 a.m. And he said, no, if I don't do this right now, Michael Jackson's going to do it. Because he thought this creativity is going to go somewhere else if I don't capture it and do it right now. And I think that's true with lots of things. How many times have people had this idea for a gadget, a business, and they think, oh, that's silly or something. And then like 2 months later, they'll see somebody has done that exact same thing. And they'll say, like, I had that idea. Yeah, because ideas float. So if you don't grab it, someone else will.
Yeah, I like that. I think that I wonder, one of the things for writing, I think, is that separates a writer from not writer is writing. So you have to write the idea down when the idea occurs. And then it becomes, what do you do with it after you write it? And then that's just on to, are you going to be a published writer or not? Whether it's self-published or published some other way. But
yeah,
when the idea is out there, I do wonder if creativity has the muse, the force, whatever it is that's out there, and it's broken into a bunch of different pieces for a bunch of different things. Like you have an art energy out there. To me, art is more of like drawing or painting. And then you have the music one and the writing one and the poetry one, which is a little bit different than writing, but for me, poetry is much different. Feels like it comes from a different place than writing. There are similarities. So I don't doubt that the writing energy that's out there and the poetry energy that's out there know each other. And when they have creative cocktail hour, they probably have conversations about things. But it does feel like you're tapping into a different thing when you're writing poetry versus writing prose or whatever you want to call it, exposition, a book. And I do wonder if I don't pay attention to it. Like for the last few years, I've been paying attention to the poetry more than anything else. And I thought it would run out, but I feel like now it would never run out, that it's always going to be there in that place wherever it resides, looking for ways to manifest its ideas or to somehow mix with another person's ideas so that that thing can come out. So I visualize poetry as residing in this dark forest, not dark like you can't see anything, but like a twilight type forest. And you're just going through this forest that is a division between worlds of where we live versus where this other thing lives, and you can't go all the way into the other thing's world and it can't go all the way into your world. So I do wonder, are we amused to it and it's amused to us, or is it just one way? I don't know, still thinking about that. But I think that the more often you show up to that and that you're open to it, the more it recognizes you. So you can get into that state of mind of poetry much easier, or I can do it now much easier than I could 3 or 4 years ago. And then I think if I get those ideas or those messages or whatever it is, and I don't write it down, it's just going to go talk to somebody else about it, or, so it needs to get out. So you're just the conduit at that point. And I can tell when I write something, just me writing it versus trying to mix it or transcribe a message from some other place. Sounds weird, but.
Oh, that is so brilliant. I think I'm going to be thinking about that all day.
And sometimes I think about writing.
Fascinating.
I think about the writing muse as being in an apartment. It's not in a forest. It's in an apartment, and it's wearing a robe, it's watching TV. Maybe it's reading.
Oh my God.
And every now and then it's getting some milk out of the refrigerator, and it's just waiting. It's just waiting for me to go, hey, what do you got? Let's have some exchange. And I just wonder how long it sits there and waits before it loses interest in you because you've lost interest in it.
That is so good. Yeah, I love that idea. Because it's not a new idea. The Greeks wrote about the muses.
Mm-hmm.
How many thousands of years ago, right?
I like their way of thinking about it, and I like the Romans' way of thinking about it, to where they called it genius. That it's not like we use genius. It's not, oh, you're a genius for writing this. No, you didn't write it. The genius wrote it. Yes, you just were the instrument, not the hand.
Yeah, I see. So I love it. You're right. It's not a new idea, but you've put a new spin on it. I mean, I read Sting's biography, and he talked about that's where he gets a lot of his songs. He has a property up in, I believe, Scotland that has a wooded area. That's what I'm like, he's talking about twilight. This is crazy. And he'll go for walks and just be with the earth, and songs will come to him. And so you're telling me how you write, and it's to me, that's the exact same process he does with music, because basically music is just poetry with, song, like a tune behind it, right? Songs are like musical poetry a lot of times.
Okay.
That's fascinating. There you go. You can tell people you have the same writing process as Sting.
So when they get to an end of a poem I wrote, and they're like, how come this line repeats 27 times? I can go, well, it's, just like Sting. Sending out a SOS.
Yeah, well, yeah, the music and it's not the only one. I mean, the other famous couple that I think of that does that is Bernie Sanders and Elton John, right? Bernie was writing these poems, basically. They call them lyrics, but it was poems. And then Elton would just stick them on his piano and look at them, and he said the tune would just come. Just like you said, he is the musical muse who would just send him the sound that matched the words.
So then, with ideas, I take it you ascribe, is that the word, to the idea that it's out there in the ether and you have to tap into it?
Yes. And I mean, that's what I write about in my books. You know, there's different parts to us. And one of the parts that I talk about in these books is, you know, tapping into your subconscious mind and reprogramming it. So Money and You is obviously about reprogramming your mind to be wealthy. You know, Tag created something he called Alphamatics, where you repeat, you know, I deserve to be rich. You know, money is my friend, whatever, he has like pages of them. It's so fun. And he, you know, he talks about that. So you're changing your subconscious, because that's, you know, the ego here on earth and the 3D. But I believe there's more to us. I mean, I've read so many books that talk about how this is only a fraction of what we are. You know, some say 30%, some say 10%. And the soul isn't in the body is in the soul. Like, we're massive beings. So no wonder you can go out into the woods and capture all this stuff, and we actually have an energy field that's around us that can be measured. I mean, that's how they do EKGs. When you go into the hospital to check your heart, they're measuring the electrical impulses. We're literally energy. So it's so fascinating. But I'm going to be thinking about your writing process all day. And I'm wondering, and this is the other reason I love connecting with other creators and other authors and other business people, is because you just basically handed me a gift. We're having this conversation and you gave me an idea that I kind of knew about, but had never really heard it said that way. And now I'm going to be thinking, okay, what can I add to my daily routine to help open up some of those creative channels? So now maybe I'll start going for more walks just to be with the, you know, the muses that are out there and see what comes. So I'm probably going to shift what I do just to see how what I do can change for the better. So thank you very much for that gift today.
I think that's what a lot of people, when they talk about writing, where it's you just have to show up. You have to sit in the chair and be open to the ideas. I like that. I agree with it. I also think it's anytime that idea occurs, you have to write it down. And you miss some ideas and then you think, well, I'll remember that in the middle of the night.
No, you don't.
I'll remember that.
I try and I don't.
Yeah, that happens a few times. And then you're like, okay, I got to write this down.
This
phone
thing
has been great
is the
for
best. Because guess what? We always have one. You might not have a notepad. You can open up the voice recorder, just say it and forget it. And then later you'll have it. You don't even have to type anything.
That's that other step to writing, is you have to record it and then you have to do something with it after it. How do you organize? How do you organize all your notes and everything?
You know what it is? It's when I teach people how to win giveaways, one of the keys to winning is consistency. And I say it's no different than if you want to get fit, you need to go to the gym. You can't go to the gym one day and expect to bench press 300 pounds. Well, maybe you could, not me, you know, like, you know, I'm only going to bench press so much on the very first time. But if I go to the gym consistently, I'll be able to walk on the treadmill longer, maybe even go faster, even steeper, go to classes. My flexibility increases, my strength increases, and it's a little bit over time. And it's the same with, say, getting healthier. You change your diet, you're not going to lose 20 pounds in one day, but it's consistency over time equals results. To me, it's the same thing with writing. It's just consistency over time equals results. So some days I don't feel like writing, but I still get in there and I write. And I find once I get going, just like going to the gym, you don't want to go, but once you're there and you get going on the treadmill or whatever class you're in or whatever you're doing, once you get going, you start to get that momentum. And then you might look up and 3 hours has gone by. You know, oh, I've been sitting here for 3 hours writing. I didn't even notice, because once you got going and you were in that groove, it's okay. So even if you don't feel like it, because let's face it, we never feel like it, or at least I don't. I don't always feel like it, but I just sit down, like you said, sit down and start writing. And even if it's terrible at first, just keep going. Even if you have to like erase it after and redo it, it's just keep going. It'll come.
Yeah, it's good advice. I've never had a time working out or writing where after I did it, that I thought that was a waste of time. I wish I didn't do it.
Yes.
So
thank you for that point. I forgot to bring that point up. Yeah, because afterwards, yeah, you always feel better that you did it.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, this has been such a good chat.
So then, to wrap it up with a small question then.
Okay.
What do you think the purpose of existence is?
I think it's just to experience. I think that's why we've been given all the things, right? We've been given love and joy and excitement and happiness and, ecstasy. And then we get sadness and anger and frustration and guilt and depression and all that. Like, we have it all. We have this whole gamut of everything super amazing to everything super terrible. But we wouldn't appreciate any of it if we didn't have the duality, right? We can't appreciate the sun if we never have the rain, but we also need the rain because that's how we get the flowers. The flowers need both, right? It's the whole thing. So I think we're here to experience all of it. That's the whole purpose, just to experience.
I agree. Experience and perspective, if I was going to put anything else with that, would be because each of our perspectives is so much different. The experience is so much different that's why we're here. Because if we are, this goes a little into the crazy, maybe what some people will say crazy is, like, if we are all one, and you look at a lot of different religions, a lot of different philosophies, it seems like they point towards that. Like,
yeah, we just have to all get smarter and realize it. If think about it, I think about this sometimes. If everyone on the planet behaved as if we were one, how would this entire planet shift?
Yeah, I think that's the reason we're here, and the reason our minds, as limited as they are, can't hold on to that idea. Because somewhere else, if we are all one, somewhere else, it's happening already. That the reason we're here is to experience that different perspective. Because if you are all one, how are you going to get all these different perspectives? And if you are all one and maybe a part of, or however you want to look at it, is if you are this ultimate being, there would be things that you wouldn't be able to feel. So if you could do anything, you wouldn't feel the helplessness of feeling like you couldn't do anything. And you wouldn't feel fear because you could do anything you wanted. I mean, if you
I see what you're saying.
If you were all powerful, how would you feel fear? You would break yourself into thousands and millions of little pieces to experience it from countless different perspectives. So you could then bring it all back to one and go, oh, now I have collected all these perspectives. So
that's so fascinating. You know what? We'll wrap up on this resource for everybody. I highly recommend the movie, and it's a little bit old, but it's still good. The Last Mimsy. And it's got Timothy. Oh, is it Dalton? Timothy Dalton?
Maybe.
And it's
like
so good. It's an older film. And I think, was it still filmed in square? Like, I think it was like, I have an old, I had a VHS copy that I digitized. Like, it's old. But it's about the future. And to influence the current, they they send the last Mimsy back in time. And then it's all the things that happen to change the future. Because they always say there is no past, there's no future, everything's only happening now. So that's what they do. And it's just fascinating to see how it all unfolds. The other one I like for that is the movie The Arrival. I don't know. Have you seen that one?
The
With the
Arrival
12
with the big potato thing.
UAPs or whatever they call them now. UAPs.
Yeah. They look like a potato. There's octopus inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Spoiler
the
alert.
idea is what happens to her, and it took me, I had to watch it twice to catch this. What she was seeing wasn't the past, it was actually the future, because everything was cyclical. And it was fascinating. So then she saw the future where she'd already written the book and talked to the general, or spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen the movie. And then you realize that he gave her the code, the message that she needed in the past to bring her to this point. And then at the end, when she was hugging that fella, she said, "Oh, I forgot how nice it is to," but she had just kind of started the romance with him, but she'd already had the whole relationship. It's fascinating. So sometimes I wonder if that's one of the things people do. When they're trying to envision a better goal for themselves, they have trouble because they can only remember the past. But one of my tricks is to say and a lot of people call this scripting, but remember the future, right? Talk about an event as if it's already happened. Right. So if you want to buy a brand new house, for example, that's your goal. Talk about the house. Oh my God. Do you remember the day that we closed on the house? It was so amazing. And our friends came over and they brought a pizza and we sat in this empty place and we were sitting on the carpet in the living room and somebody brought a bottle of soda over and we had the pizza and we put on the fireplace and we only had that one light bulb that the people that left us because they took everything else. It was so weird. And, they just make something up and talk about how wonderful it is and remember that and get all the feelings as if you were thinking in the past. And then people have done this and they always talk about how it's amazing how the future unfolds in front of them.
Yeah, I think it supports a lot of the idea of a simulation theory, that we're in a simulation. And I think it's worth thinking about, because if you just replace the word simulation with reality, it makes so much sense that we're in a thing that's created by a creator and all of our destinies are already known. Oh, that sounds like a simulation. We're just running through it. And there could be so many simulations inside of simulations and other things going, and every turn could be another reality, aka simulation. A lot to think about. What's the best?
We can talk about this all day. I love this stuff. I love going down the rabbit hole, but that's what the books are about. Like Helene's other books, like I don't have any of the banners up, but In Contact with Other Realms, her first memory that she writes about, she might have had others, but I haven't found anything she wrote about it yet. I might have some other files. And she remembered watching her grandfather pass away, and she was little and they were in the Catholic Church. They always said, "Oh, a guardian angel is going to come take Grandpa away." Like everyone has one, and they're going to come. That angel's going to come and take Grandpa to heaven. She's like, okay. So she's in the room when he passed away because she was stubborn. She was like, she wanted to stay, and her mother just didn't want to deal with the scene. So she's like, fine, just be quiet. And she said she watched all these people come through the wall, and the one grandpa stayed on the bed and the other one got up and was happy to see everybody and was hugging them. And she could hear them murmuring, but she couldn't really hear what they were saying. And then they all went through the wall together. They just disappeared. And the other grandpa just stayed on the bed, and he'd gone, and grandma started crying. And then she said to her mom, well, where's the angel? Like, where were all those people? And grandma's like, shh, don't say anything. Or her mother's like, shh, don't say anything to grandma. She's like, but there's no guardian angel. She was really upset. She was 6. And she had messengers, but she didn't have an easy life. Like, everyone thinks if you are more intuitive or can see into the 4th dimension that your life's going to be easy. But she had a rheumatic fever when she was a teenager, and several of her friends also had it. This was back just as penicillin was being introduced. Like, this is how long ago that was. And several of her friends died, and she lived and was healed when she saw her messenger, because she said, I'm ready to go. Like, months she was in bed with this pain. And finally she says, like, look, I'm ready to die. And she had a messenger come to her and say, well, what makes you think you're done? You're just starting. You got to write about all this stuff. And she's like, what? And she was healed. The next day she was fine. And then she was allowed to go back to school. And so she's had lots of experiences like that. And she's learned to, talk to different guides and different things. But that's all in those books. And she apparently levitated once. I've heard of other people doing it, but she writes a story about how she did that. How she tried for months and months and months, and then one day it finally happened when she wasn't paying attention. It was just, she's written about all kinds of things, and some people can believe it, some people cannot. I just have always thought there's more to this planet than we'll ever know. So I think there's stuff out there that we haven't even thought of or realized yet. that's out there, and we'll figure it out one day, or maybe we won't. We won't know till we're on the other side, on the next part of our journey.
Yeah, I think that's the reason we're here, for some reason, is to have a limited understanding and view of what's going on, because you wouldn't get it if you knew. Like, it would ruin the end.
Well, that's like, she called her book the Name It and Claim It game. And, the whole point is it's a game. That's why Florence Scovel Shinn wrote the book. These are the rules of, I think it's called The Rules of Life. And someone else wrote, if life is a game, here are the rules. I think that one was, I can't remember. There's a whole points to ponder that Helene wrote about, but she didn't know in her day to give credit to certain things. And they're her interpretation of this, the rules to being human that are in Sanskrit. And one of them is, if you're here on Earth, you're learning. And you're like, dang, some days.
Yeah.
Some days
Just
are great.
video
Some
game.
days are like, dang, what do I need to learn? Because this is terrible.
It's difficult when you're in them to take that step back and go, okay, this is a terrible situation, but I'm feeling this feeling for a reason. And I don't know if in the end, if there is nothing else, and this is just luck that we are these life forms here at this time, and then when you die, it's just a long dreamless sleep, aka nothing, then okay. But if you spend that time while you're here thinking about other things like that, and it helps you to cope with life here, then I think that's worth it, even if there isn't anything else. But I certainly hope that there's something else. I mean, that's the classic thing that you would say to an atheist is, do you think, you might not think there is a God, but do you hope there is a God? Do you hope there's something else after this? And I think every human would probably, if you could communicate well enough to them, like if they were understanding what you were asking, would say, yeah, I hope there's more than this.
I personally believe there's like Helene said, there's another adventure. This is just one adventure in a long line of adventures we have. And there's so many different authors that have read it. One of my goals is to eventually have my own office that's big enough that or a place that I can have my library out, because they're all in boxes right now. So I always say one day I'm going to have a library so I can have all those books out. But I have Like I said, I've been reading these books since I was 18, and I'm turning 58 next in 2 months. So I've been reading these books for like 40 years. I have a lot of them. And the, fiction books I let go of, most of them, but this improvement books. And then I was blessed with getting some of Helene's library, and I got some of Tag's library. So yeah, I want to display all that stuff one day. I'll just put the energy and the juju out there right now.
Like The Secret. Yeah, The Secret seems at odds with the other one of repeating it all the time. I think The Secret was just tell it to the universe one time and then it will occur.
Well, Helene did a method. The reason that the Name It and Claim It game got famous. Now, what's interesting is she didn't actually have this in the original 1971 printing. But she had part of it in the 1988 printing, and then she wrote an article in 2009. So I actually added that whole article in the newer version. So she did something called SPEC, which is select it, project it, expect it, collect it. So it's her expansion on ask, believe, receive, because I think she expanded it because people were getting stuck, and it took me even a while to figure out that it's select it. Well, that's obvious. What do you want? The thing is, a lot of people don't select it. They say, well, I want this. And then they go over here. Well, I want that. Well, no, I want this. But if you were in a restaurant and you kept calling the waiter over every 3 minutes to change your order, you would never get anything from the kitchen. They would not know what to make you.
Good example.
So you have to figure out, what do you want exactly? Or how many times people have gotten something they thought they wanted and they go, oh, this isn't quite what I wanted.
Oh, yeah.
Well, were you specific?
I think
the next thing is projection. So to me, that's the thought process, the idea where you do, and some people can't visualize. So I tell them, do a vision board, write it in a journal. It's all about how it feels. So you don't actually have to see it in the mind's eye if you don't have that ability, but just visualize it. And then expect it is as if it's already happened. So if you already had the house, if you already had the job, if you already had the boyfriend or girlfriend, if you already had the trip or the car or whatever it is, how would that already feel? Right? If you won $1 million in the lottery and they sent you the check and your bank goes, oh yeah, we have to hold this for 2 weeks. You'd already know it's there. You'd be acting totally different for 2 weeks, right? Until that check cleared. So that's the idea behind expect it. And then collect it, believe it or not, is harder for some people than you think. If I pay you a compliment and go, wow, I really like your setup. You're so lucky to have that nice office, and I love your hat and the background. It's perfect for what we're talking about. And you go, yeah, like you don't even want to take my compliment. Well, if you can't even take a nice compliment, like, oh, thanks, I worked hard on that. I wanted to make sure it was perfect for people when I was talking to them. If you can't even take that, why would the universe give you everything else? Like you have to also be able to receive with, I think also with grace. Like, don't be like, give me that.
Yeah. Yeah. Being thankful is a big thing. Thankful and understanding how lucky you are is.
Well, that's one of the things I teach. I teach people. One of the things I teach is, well, how to win. And I have a whole section. Now, it's interesting. Talk about evolution. In this book, How to Win Cash, Cars, Trips, and More, I had an attracting luck chapter because people said, how do you get more lucky? And I said, well, you have to think you're lucky and believe you're lucky before you are lucky. Like if you don't, a lot of people go, oh, I don't enter giveaways because I never win. I go, no, you never will. If you don't ever believe that you will, you won't. Now, Helene entered differently. She entered all the time. And she would pick one thing and focus on it and win that prize. But also the hobbies changed tremendously. And I don't like her way of entering. I like to enter a lot of things and see what shows up. So I always say like, oh, is this the one I'm going to win? Or am I going to win this one? Or is it this one? So I'm entering all the different things and I'm expecting to win. I just don't know which one. And I think that makes a difference. But now, as I'm writing my updated edition called Prizes, Prizes Everywhere, I changed the title of the chapter to Being Lucky. You're not attracting luck. It's not external. You have to embody it, and then you win. So now the chapter's Being Lucky, not attracting luck. It's not external. It says the woman who has crystals on her desk because she figures they can't hurt. So I have green aventurine for luck and some solidite and some.
When did you start collecting crystals?
Oh my gosh. I don't remember. I have a whole tray, and then I keep some. Like I got this one from Tag Powell himself, and I have a big one on my desk from Helene. So they've been coming. And then I had someone gift me one that says win on it. How could I not take that one? Tiger's eye. So yeah, I love my crystals. And citrine for wealth and prosperity. Because if you're entering sweepstakes, you want that. And book sales don't hurt either. And then actually this one, I think this is solidite. This is good for writing. Just a tip. Keep some around your desk.
Solidite pen.
Solidite. I believe solidite's the one for writers. So, and then someone had given it to me a little crown. Tea light holder. So I use it for my crystals on my desk because I'm like, of course, contest queen needs a little crown to hold her crystals.
What's the best way for people to follow your work?
Well, if you want to learn how to win sweepstakes, it's Contest Queen. If you have an idea for a giveaway for your little business, reach out to me at Idea Majesty. And if you want to read any of the books or any of the out of print materials from Helene Hadsel or Tag Powell, and more information on the books that I have published, head over to Words for Winning. It's really easy. If you just type in my name, you get like a gazillion hits on Google.
Okay. I have some links that I'll put in the show notes for your YouTube and Facebook and your Instagram and some of the Contest Queen ones. So people can go
everyone
there,
likes
and
to
I'm
win
sure they can find them.
giveaways. It's so fun. We even have an annual sweepstakes convention every year. That's next year it's in Little Rock, Arkansas, and then next year it's going to Phoenix, Arizona.
When people book
Virginia City.
When people book rooms for that, do they come in like a scratch ticket to where you can scratch, and then you're like, I got a suite. Oh, I got
no, we just get a discount because the hotel puts it out. But there's a event. I'm deciding, am I going to get a vendor's table next year? I haven't decided. I might. And then a lot of times the vendors have raffles, and some of them get the scratch tickets printed up, believe it or not. So it's fun.
Is there anything that you wanted to cover that we didn't, or any thoughts you have for closing?
No, I just think that we covered a lot of stuff, but I think people just need to follow their dreams, even if it's part-time while you're doing something else. You know, don't think that you can't do something. I remember getting a C. This is how far back this goes. I got a C in college on a paper, an English paper. And I remember thinking, it's okay. It doesn't matter. I won't be a writer. Meanwhile, I'm on book 12. I'm on the 4th Audible edition. I write blogs and newsletters and things every day. So just follow the path. And it's definitely not a straight line. Oh my gosh, I wish it was. There's been a lot of twists and turns on this trip, I tell you. But just keep going because it's fun and you just don't know what'll show up next. Like I didn't know I was going to end up publishing all of Tag's books from Helene's. That was just a path that door just opened. And I'm really blessed that I am because I have 9 more of his books to publish.
Nice.
That's just the first one. Unfortunately, like I said, I unfortunately couldn't get it out before he passed away, but I'm sure he's very pleased with the results at the moment.
Good.
So yeah, just keep going. Just follow your path. Don't listen to anybody else if they tell you can't do it. Because I never thought I would write this many books and have my own business. I have my own business. No, you can just do whatever you want. There's no rules. You want to write music, write music. You want to start a restaurant, figure it out. Work somewhere in a restaurant part-time. See if you even like it. Try stuff. It's a game. Life is a game. Play it. Have fun. Explore. Enjoy.
Thank you for your time. I'll talk to you after this musical exit.
Thank you.